All right, welcome back. Here's our climate news section tonight. Couple good stories we got to talk about. Zealand removing wind turbines after several issues. Now, I read this article, and back in 2009, this area here, this is in Michigan. Wind turbines in Helder Park in Holland Township are being torn down. The city of Zealand built the turbines in 2009 in an effort to use more sustainable energy. The turbines were placed outside the city limits due to zoning issues. The park was chosen by engineers who believed it was best placed to generate wind. It cost the city about $500,000 right after the turbines went up. The city says things went downhill. An August 1st, 2019 photo shows crews taking down this turbine. Shortly after that, the manufacturer of those units went out of business. Now, that comment about the paragraph does not go with the story. It's just giving you a comment on the photograph here. But shortly after that, manufacturers of those units went out of business. They're referring to 2009 when they installed these wind turbines. So in other words, this company made a $500,000 deal with Zealand, town of Zealand here in Michigan, cashed the check, and before the ink dried on the signature, they bolted and went out of business. How convenient. The maintenance issues were a big problem. In 2014, there was a significant period of no operation. So there was a long period of time because of maintenance issues that there was nothing being produced from these turbines whatsoever. Boatright says there was an instance where brake tips fell off one of the turbines and landed in a nearby field. He says on top of safety and maintenance concerns, the turbines were barely generating energy. That is not shocking. Over a 20-year period, the turbines were expected to create enough energy to pay off the almost $500,000 used to build them. At the near halfway mark, it's not even close to that goal. Well, good for them. It's sad that it took them 10 years to figure it out. This is just an indication, folks, of what I've always talked about when we talk about green energy and how everyone likes to talk about how solar fields and wind turbines are the future of reliable, sustainable energy. And one of my biggest complaints about green energy is the maintenance and how much it actually does cost for the actual installation, your maintenance, the harvesting, everything. Do we really see any savings, A, and B, do these things, can they produce enough energy to sustain? And just in this article, now this is concerning too. You're in Michigan, all right? So what happens if 2014 was one of those new Green Deal years where we weren't allowed to use coal or natural gas anymore? We finally reached that point of the policy. And because of maintenance issues, several days, weeks, who knows how long this was talking about, but there was days where there was no production at all from the wind turbine. How the hell are you going to stay warm in Michigan if these things are failing like that? And two, the lack of maintenance, the lack of knowledge about how and when to maintenance these things is going to be an actual problem across the country. Does everybody out there that's installing these solar panels and wind turbines really understand how these things work? Do we really have a firm grip? Do we really have engineers at each site checking these things on a weekly, maybe daily basis like they should be? How expensive is that? That's my point, folks. No one's thinking about the cost of what it takes to run these fields of solar panels and wind turbines. But this town here in Michigan is the smart one, as they are now tearing down these overgrown, overpriced, and overhyped tools of energy. No longer. They're being torn down. The cost of maintenance does not equal the benefits that we're supposed to be reaping, and we're not. And this basically what Zealand is doing, unfortunately, and I'm not laughing, it's not funny, but they're stopping the bleeding. They're hemorrhaging money from their budget on these turbines, and they're saying enough is enough. I don't know their conditions on their town. I don't know what their schools are like. I don't know any of that. But I can tell you this. For spending $500,000 10 years ago and then deciding to tear them down, that's a very, very, very expensive build and tear down. But that's extreme. And the reason why that they're doing this is because they know, and they've done the math, they've crunched the numbers, they're going to lose more than just $500,000 over the next several years. In fact, they know these things are not working. They're scrapping it. This is the tone setter of the Green New Deal, in my opinion. Stuff like this. And I'll tell you what, folks, I'll work my butt off to find articles that are like this all over the world, not just here in the United States, but all over the world. I will work my butt off to make sure I find each article that covers tearing these turbines down, because it's a financial disaster. It's an environmental hazard. Think about all the birds, the wildlife that has been killed because of these turbines. Yeah, I know, man pollutes the air and kills natural wildlife every day with their pollutants in the rivers and all that. I get that. But on top of what this is supposed to do for a civilization, it's just not doing it. And these people are smart enough to realize it took 10 years, but they're one of the few places I know that are actually tearing these things down because it's not working. And it's too expensive to maintain. That's probably the main thing. I don't know much about that town. They could be very small. They could be huge. Their budget might be incredible. But the point is, almost spending $1 million on this investment 10 years ago, and they're just tearing them down to the ground. That's pretty extreme. And usually when you're doing something that extreme, it's because it didn't work. All right, so I kind of touched base on this last Thursday. July 19th was probably the fourth warmest month of the last 41 years. Global reanalysis data sets need to start being used for monitoring of global surface temperatures. This is according to Roy Spencer. Note that it turns out the WMO, which announced July 19th as a near record, relies upon ERA 5 reanalysis, which apparently departs substantially from the CFSV2 reanalysis, making my proposed reliance on only reanalysis data for surface temperature monitoring also subject to considerable uncertainty. So really, big shout out here to Joe Bastardi, as Roy Spencer is referring to data from weatherbell.com as reliable and valuable as well. The reanalysis picture for July 2019, the only reanalysis data I'm aware of that is available near real time to the public, is from weatherbell.com and comes from NOAA Climate's forecast system version CFSV2. So again, this is, I know a lot of you out there watch Joe Bastardi. I know a lot of you out there trust him. I can say that I'm a fan as well. I think Joe does a good job at relaying the information without picking a side, but he obviously does not believe that man is causing this warmth or any of it. Man doesn't cause either side. What Joe does is he tries to line things up with what's happened in history. And sometimes Joe gets it wrong. Joe's not too proud to tell you that. He'll be the first one to come out before his critics. He'll come out and apologize, or he'll come out with a video explaining how he was wrong. Again, we look back, and this goes for the Grand Solar Minimum crowd. All we have to go off of is empirical data, charts from the past. Obviously, no one alive has ever seen a Grand Solar Minimum. So does that mean just because we're being told that we're going to have a modern minimum type Grand Solar Minimum, does that mean it's going to exactly mock the past modern minimum? Or does it just mean that we're going to see conditions that will be that of similar of a modern minimum? And I guess what I'm saying is that we don't repeat itself exactly. It may happen, but in different ways. It's not going to be an exact carbon copy. And I think that's what Joe tries to tell his listeners as well when he's giving out forecasts. He's basing some of his information on what's already happened and what happened the last time this happened. And I'll tell you this, he's right more than he is wrong. I'd say he's about an 8 out of 10 as far as being right to wrong. So not bad. We'll leave the link here at thegrandsolarminimum.com, but I had a feeling that I would have some support. I lashed out, I think, on Thursday about July not being the hottest on record. I think I showed NOAA.gov's temperature analysis from the past 3 years, how it's showing a sharp decline. It's lining up with the decline that we have right now on Roy Spencer's website on the UAH. The NOAA and the UAH, the temperature decline over the last couple of years, they are identical. I got into a polite conversation about the UHA, the UAH, and surface thermometers. And the gentleman told me that he would rather rely on surface thermometers than satellite data. And I would agree with this guy if the surface thermometers were actually in places that would be favorable for reading the temperature of that particular area. My point is being, we've seen a lot of false records being broke. Temperatures being reported from the rooftops of France, from airport runways all over the world, to parking lots in Scotland with an ice cream truck, a diesel ice cream truck. By the way, it has to remain running to keep the refrigerators and freezers running. And the weather station was located several feet away from where the exhaust of the ice cream truck is. Now, his defense was that, these reliable data sets are managed properly. Therefore, that type of stuff doesn't happen. Well, that's absolutely false. And I didn't get much into it with the gentleman. Actually, the last thing I'd said to him was the fact that you're talking about surface thermometers that are located on runways of airports that are located in between highways that are also being located on rooftops. And that's how I left it at. And he never replied back. And maybe he just doesn't have the time, or maybe he realizes, or he could actually see my argument and my concern. There is one satellite, I think it's the ARS or something, the AIRS or something like that. It's more of an infrared, and it only works on completely clear skies. So if it's cloudy out, you're not going to get an accurate temperature reading from this satellite. And the IPCC and NOAA rely on that data from that particular satellite. Now, the satellites they use at UAH they don't have that issue where they have to have clear skies. They might be a little lower than what some of these other readings are coming in at, but that makes a difference to me, especially when you have satellites that cannot read accurate temperatures if there's any cloud coverage. Folks, take a look at the world right now. There's websites all over the internet where you can go and see the cloud coverage of the Earth. I think it's safe to say we're 75 to 85% covered in clouds. Period. So that AIRS satellite should be not even considered at all as part of any kind of data set, in my opinion. When we're in 80% cloud coverage, and even NASA and NOAA have admitted that this satellite does not record accurate readings if it does not have clear sky conditions. So your argument to your surface temperatures and your satellite, this particular satellite data is one of the ones I'd like to say that's in the middle. It's the moderate reading of all of the satellite that they use and all the surface monitoring tools they use. This is the moderate. This is right there in the middle when you're talking about cooling and warming. And just more examples of how there are flaws in how we record climate. But I mean, to me, this is... Joe points it out. It's not just here in the U.S. that experience below normal temperatures. This graph here shows us the entire month of July. These are the areas of the world that experienced below July temperatures. please explain how Alaska and parts of Africa and parts of the Sahara and maybe France and Spain, those areas, how did those areas carry the global temperatures as the hottest July on record? I mean, that's grossly exaggerated. When you look at this temperature anomaly map from July 1st to July 31st, let me zoom it back out a little bit just to show you guys where the dates are. So July of 2019 was not the warmest on record, when this many parts of the world experienced below normal temperatures. Especially the ones in the northern hemisphere. I mean, that's the ones we should be really concerned about, right? It's supposed to be cold down in the southern hemisphere, right? We've got cold all over, according to this map. Yeah, we'll leave it here at our website. The link, you click on that and go to Dr. Roy Spencer's website as well. And I wanted to show, and Mari, I apologize. I made you, this is basically a double duplicate story here. So I apologize. Kind of gave my producer some flack about it. This is the India 108 lives claimed in Bangladesh. Major flooding. And like I said, we still got 2 more months.
Did you refresh that?
I didn't, but that's okay.
That's why.
Yeah, I know. Well, let's do it right now. Let's give the folks a logo to look at while I go ahead and refresh.
I didn't even.
You know,
sorry, G.
That's all right. We got it together here at the Grand. It's a Monday night. This is actually going pretty smooth for a Monday night, if you ask me. We've seen lots of fun on our Monday shows, and yeah, you did rearrange it for me, and I was not smart enough to. Yeah, well, you know, that thing happens. Anyway, all right, so let's get back to it, shall we? Let's hope. 30 before and after flood photos here in the Midwest. Mississippi River has been flooding since February of 2019, making it the second longest lasting flood in the region in 92 years. President Donald Trump has declared emergencies for over a dozen states and have had major flood-related disasters. Some soybean and corn farmers have been unable to plant any crops in their land since it's underwater. Some interesting photos here of the area down, what we're talking about. Randy has lived in the area for about 50 years, but this is the first time he won't be planting at all. Here they are gliding towards what usually is a crop field of soybeans. Instead, it's 6 feet of water. That means the Dardens won't be bringing in their income this year. Usually grow about $600,000 worth of crop. That's not coming in, folks. Floodwaters swallow up tractors on farmland near the Mississippi River. Submerging trucks. Basically, these folks are using 4-wheel drives or boats to get around. And we have some before and after photos really at the bottom of this. This photo right here is pointing out that this lighthouse usually is not in the water. It's just, you know, crazy. Guy out doing lawn work, just 12 feet away from him is floodwaters. And he's lucky he's able to mow the grass. This is what that road usually looks like, by the way. All right. So where the sign is, this gentleman's mowing his lawn right here. And in the photo before, we're covered in water right here. Take you back. Davenport, Iowa. Similar scenes. This is a year to remember, folks. The Great Flood. I don't know how much longer we have to have flooding conditions for this to trump that, but we're watching it. Some amazing before and after pictures here from the flood, before and after. Still water that needs to reside. These are pictures from Iowa, Illinois, Indiana. Today, there is no lack of moisture at all in any of the Midwest whatsoever. And what's sad is that we still don't have the mainstream coverage of all this. This article is talking about the 1941 Congress approved a plan called the Yazoo Backwater Project to deal with these floods. It was meant to build pumps, levees, and canals to drain flooded areas. I say they need to do it. If this is any indication of what the next several years is going to be like, they need to get acting and acting fast. Guys, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Take a look at the wonderful work of David Birch. We will be right back after this message.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.